The year was 2247, and Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the ESS Horizon. He watched through the main viewport as the colors of hyperspace faded away. The swirling blues and purples turned into the deep black of normal space. Stars appeared, one by one, filling the darkness with their cold light. Daniel had been a captain for 12 years. But this mission was different. His ship carried 200 people, all volunteers who had left Earth behind. They were looking for a new home. Earth was dying. The air was poison in most places. The water was running out. Governments had collapsed. People were starving in the streets. The horizon was humanity's last hope. 6 other ships had been sent out over the past 20 years. None of them had ever sent a message back. Lieutenant Karen Price sat at the communications station. Her fingers moved across the holographic displays that floated in front of her. She was young, only 25, but she was the best communications officer Daniel had ever worked with. Her face was tight with concentration. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Karen said. Her voice was calm, but Daniel could hear the edge of worry in it. "There are signals all around us, dozens of them, maybe hundreds." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. "Are they responding to our hails?" "No, sir. I've been broadcasting on all frequencies for the past 10 minutes. Nothing. But they're definitely there. The signals are too organized to be natural." Commander Luke Bennett walked over from his station. He was Daniel's second in command, a tall man with gray hair and a scar on his left cheek from a shuttle accident years ago. "Could they be automated systems? Satellites or probes?" "I don't think so," Karen said. She pulled up a display that showed dozens of blinking dots surrounding their position. "These signals are moving, and they're getting closer." Daniel made a decision. "Battle stations. Raise shields. And power up the weapons. I want everyone ready for anything." The alarm rang through the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. The crew of the Horizon had trained for this moment. But training was different from reality. Daniel could see the fear on their faces as they rushed to their positions. For 3 hours, nothing happened. The signals stayed at a distance, circling like sharks around wounded prey. The crew waited. Some prayed. Some checked their equipment. Again and again, some just sat in silence and thought about Earth. Then the message came through. It wasn't in any human language. The computers had to translate it, running the alien words through dozens of programs before they made sense. Karen's hands shook as she read the translation on her screen. "Captain, you need to hear this," she said. The message played through the bridge speakers. A flat, emotionless voice spoke in perfect English, though Daniel knew it was just the computer's translation. "Human vessel. You have entered controlled space. You are in violation of Galactic Concordate law. State your purpose immediately." Daniel felt a surge of hope. First contact. Humanity had finally found other intelligent life. He straightened his uniform and activated the communication channel. "This is Captain Daniel Hayes of the Earth vessel Horizon. We come in peace. We are explorers from the planet Earth, seeking new worlds and friendly contact with other species." The response came back quickly, too quickly. "Your species is known to us. Your biological signatures have been analyzed. You are classified as contaminated. Your presence threatens the balance of this sector." Luke's face went pale. "Contaminated? What does that mean?" Before anyone could answer, more messages flooded in. The computer translated them as fast as it could. Daniel read them on his command screen, and with each line, his hope died a little more. Human aggression levels exceed acceptable parameters. Human genetic structure shows markers of violent tendencies. Human expansion patterns indicate territorial behavior incompatible with concordate member species. Recommendation: immediate quarantine or elimination. Karen looked up at Daniel with wide eyes. "Sir, there are more ships appearing on sensors. A lot more. I'm counting at least 50 now." The main view screen changed to show the tactical display. All around the horizon, Alien ships appeared. They were sleek and deadly looking, made of materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Some were small, no bigger than a fighter jet. Others were massive, larger than aircraft carriers. Another message came through. This time, a face appeared on the screen. The alien was tall and thin, with scales instead of skin. Its eyes were vertical slits like a snake's. When it spoke, Daniel could see rows of sharp teeth. "I am Admiral Vorath of the Galactic Concordat Third Fleet. Humans, you have two choices. Return to your world immediately and never leave your solar system again, or you will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide." The screen went black. The bridge was silent. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Around him, his crew waited for orders. They trusted him. They believed he could save them. Luke pulled Daniel aside and spoke quietly. "We can't go back. We used most of our fuel getting here. Even if we wanted to return to Earth, we'd never make it." "I know," Daniel said. He looked at the tactical display again. 50 alien ships. Maybe more by now. The horizon had weapons, but they were nothing compared to what those aliens probably had. Even if they fought, they would last maybe 5 minutes. "What do we do?" Luke asked. Daniel made the hardest decision of his life. "We run. Tell Paul to plot a jump to the nearest uncharted system. Anywhere those ships can't follow us." Chief Engineer Paul Carter was already working when the order came through. He was a short man, with thick arms and grease under his fingernails. He had kept the horizon running through a dozen near disasters. "Captain, I can get us 1 more jump. Maybe 2 if we're lucky. After that, the engines will need a complete overhaul." "1 jump is all we need," Daniel said. "Get us out of here." The horizon's engines powered up. Energy built in the drive core, making the whole ship vibrate. On the view screen, the alien ships were moving closer. They were forming a net, trying to surround the horizon, completely. "Jump ready," Paul called out. "But sir, I should warn you. The system I found, it's in a region called the Shadow Reach. No charts. No data. The Concordat has it marked as forbidden territory." "Why?" Daniel asked. "The computer doesn't say. Just that no one goes there." Daniel looked at his crew. At Karen, who was barely out of school. At Luke, who had a wife and 2 kids back on Earth. At all the others who had trusted him to lead them to safety. They were watching him, waiting for his decision. If the Concordat won't go there, then that's where we need to be. The universe twisted. Space folded in on itself. For a moment that felt like forever. The horizon existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Then reality snapped back, and they were somewhere else. The Shadow Reach was dark. The stars here were old and dim, but that wasn't what made everyone on the bridge gasp. All around them, floating in the emptiness of space, were structures, buildings larger than cities, towers that stretched for hundreds of miles, platforms that could have held entire countries. All of it was dark and silent and very, very old. "What is this place?" Karen whispered. Before anyone could answer, alarms started blaring. The structures were waking up. Lights flickered on across their surfaces. Energy readings spiked off the charts, and in the darkness of the Shadow Reach, something ancient opened its eyes. Dr. Helen Morris stood at the window of the research lab, staring at the massive structure floating outside. She had been studying ancient civilizations for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. The building was at least 50 miles long, made of a black material that seemed to drink in light. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing faintly with blue light. "This is impossible," she said for the 10th time. "These structures are older than anything we've ever found. Older than any civilization should be able to build." Captain Daniel Hayes stood beside her. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. None of them had. The discovery was too important, too strange. "How old are we talking about?" "The computer's best guess? At least 5 billion years. Maybe more." Helen turned to look at him. Her eyes were red from staring at screens and lack of sleep. Daniel, this changes everything. If there was a civilization this advanced that long ago, why don't we know about them? Why didn't the Concordat mention them? Maybe they don't know either, Daniel said, though he didn't believe it. The Concordat had called this place forbidden. They knew something was here. Lieutenant Kyle Adams led the first team into the nearest structure. He was a former Marine, trained for hostile environments, but as his team walked through corridors that shouldn't exist, even he felt afraid. The walls moved. Not fast, but enough to notice. A hallway would be straight one moment, then curve the next time they looked. "Command, are you seeing this?" Kyle spoke into his radio. His voice echoed strangely in the alien corridors. "We're recording everything," Daniel replied from the horizon. "What's your status?" "Confused, sir. This place doesn't follow normal rules. We walked down a corridor for 10 minutes, then turned around, and it only took 2 minutes to get back." Kyle stopped at an intersection. 3 doorways led off in different directions, but his instinct told him there were more paths than his eyes could see. Maria Lopez was with Kyle's team. She was the ship's linguist, able to speak 12 human languages fluently. She stopped in front of a wall, covered in symbols. Her hand reached out to touch them, then pulled back. "These symbols. I can almost understand them." "What do you mean, almost?" Kyle asked. "It's like they're speaking in my head. Not words exactly, but feelings, meanings." Maria closed her eyes and let her fingers trace one of the symbols. "This one means home. This one means memory. And this one," she opened her eyes suddenly, "this one means architects." The breakthrough came when they found the data core. It was a sphere of crystal, floating in the center of a huge chamber. Energy moved through it like lightning, frozen in glass. When Maria touched it, information flooded into her mind. She screamed and fell to her knees. Kyle caught her. "Maria, what's wrong?" "I can see them," she gasped. "The ones who built this place. They called themselves the architects. They were the first ones. The first civilization to reach the stars." Back on the horizon, Helen worked with Maria to translate the information from the data core. What they learned made everyone who heard it go quiet with shock. The architects had been peaceful. They had explored the galaxy not to conquer, but to learn. They had found hundreds of young species and helped them grow. They had built wonders across 1,000 worlds. For millions of years, they had been the teachers and guardians of the galaxy. Then the younger races grew afraid. The architects were too powerful, too wise, too different. The species that would later form the Galactic Concordat began to whisper among themselves. What if the architects decided to rule instead of guide? What if they turned their power against the younger races? Fear turned to hate. Hate turned to war. They didn't fight back at first, Maria explained, reading the translated records. The architects thought they could make peace. They tried to explain, to show that they meant no harm, but the younger races wouldn't listen. The war lasted for 1,000 years. The architects were more advanced, but they were few in number. The younger races bred quickly and attacked in endless waves. Slowly, system by system, the architects were pushed back. They could have won, Helen said quietly. She was reading a tactical report from the war. They had weapons that could destroy entire fleets, but they chose not to use them. They wouldn't kill on that scale, even to save themselves. In the end, the architects lost. The last of their kind retreated to places like the Shadow Reach, hoping to preserve something of what they had been. The younger races hunted them down, and when the last architect city fell, the victors made a choice. They would erase the architects from history. Every record was destroyed. Every monument torn down. Every species that remembered the truth was silenced. The Galactic Concordat was founded on a lie. They told everyone that they had always been the first, the greatest, the wisest. The architects became a ghost story, A myth whispered in dark corners. Commander Luke Bennett read the report 3 times before he spoke. They committed genocide. Then they lied about it for billions of years. And they quarantined places like this, so no one would ever know the truth, Daniel added. He felt sick. The Concordat had seemed so civilized, so advanced. But they were built on murder and lies. The biggest shock came when Helen ran a genetic analysis on the preserved architect remains they had found. She checked the results 5 times. Certain, there must be an error. When she was finally sure, she called Daniel to the lab. "Look at this," she said, pulling up 2 holographic displays. One showed human DNA. The other showed architect DNA. "Do you see it?" Daniel wasn't a scientist, but even he could see the similarities. The structures were alike in dozens of ways. Not identical, but clearly related. What does this mean? 9. It means we're connected. Humans and architects share genetic markers that can't be explained by chance or convergent evolution. Helen's hands shook as she zoomed in on specific sequences. "Daniel, I don't know how or why, but humans are descendants of the architects." The implications hit Daniel like a physical blow. Humanity wasn't just another young species. They were the children of the race the Concordat had murdered. If the Concordat ever found out, they wouldn't just quarantine Earth. They would burn it to ash and scatter the remains. "Does anyone else know?" Daniel asked. "Just us. And I'm not putting it in any official reports." Helen closed the displays. "If this information gets out, it's a death sentence for our entire species." But they weren't the only ones who had made discoveries. Deep in the central structure, the exploration teams found something that made them call for the captain immediately. Daniel flew over in a shuttle with Helen and Maria. Kyle met them at the entrance to a massive chamber. "Sir, you need to see this." The chamber was circular, a half-mile across. In the center were 3 pods made of the same crystal as the data core. And inside each pod was an architect, perfectly preserved. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with features that were eerily human. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with 2 eyes and a mouth. Their skin was pale, almost translucent. They could have been human, if humans were taller and stranger and somehow more real than real. "Are they alive?" Daniel asked. Helen checked her scanner. "Their life signs are there, but barely. It's like they're frozen between life and death. This must be some kind of stasis system." Maria walked up to the nearest pod. She placed her hand on the crystal, and symbols lit up under her palm. "They're the last ones. The last 3 architects in the universe. They put themselves in here when they knew the war was lost." "Why?" Luke asked. "Why not escape? Or fight?" "Because they wanted to leave a message." Maria's eyes were distant, reading information that came from the pod itself. They wanted someone to find them someday. To know the truth, to finish what they started. Daniel looked at the 3 sleeping figures. They had been here for billions of years, waiting in the dark, waiting for someone to find them. And now humanity, their lost children, had stumbled into their tomb. "We have to protect them," Daniel said. "And we have to protect this information. If the Concordat finds out what we know, they'll kill us all." But even as he spoke, alarms began to sound on his communicator. Karen's voice came through, tight with fear. "Captain, you need to get back to the ship. Now. We're detecting Concordat vessels entering the Shadow Reach. A lot of them." The hunt had begun. Chief Engineer Paul Carter was running system diagnostics when he noticed something strange. The architect structures around them were sending signals to the horizon. Not hostile signals, but something else. Data streams that his computers could barely understand. "Captain, you're going to want to see this," Paul called over the ship's communication system. Daniel arrived in engineering 10 minutes later, still wearing his environmental suit from the shuttle ride back. "What is it, Paul?" "1." Paul pointed to his main screen. Lines of code scrolled past faster than any human could read. The structures are talking to us. Or, more accurately, they're talking to our computer. They've been downloading information directly into our databanks. What kind of information? Everything. Paul pulled up, file after file. Weapons, systems, shield technology, propulsion designs that make our engines look like toys, medical knowledge, engineering principles. It's like they're giving us their entire technical database. Luke arrived and looked over Paul's shoulder. Why would they do that? Maybe they recognize something in us, Daniel said, thinking of the genetic connection Helen had discovered. Or maybe they've been waiting for someone to find them. Someone who could use their knowledge. Quote, Security Chief Nathan Cole entered engineering with a grim expression. He was a hard man who had served in Earth's last wars before joining the Horizon's crew. I've been analyzing those weapon systems the architects left us. Captain, these aren't defensive weapons. These are designed to fight a war. A big one. Daniel knew what Nathan was implying. The architects had built these weapons to fight the Concordat. They had lost that war, but they had left their weapons behind, for someone else to use. The question was whether humanity was ready for that responsibility. Lieutenant Karen Price's voice came over the intercom, sharp with urgency. Captain, to the bridge. Immediately. We have incoming Concordat transmissions. Daniel ran. By the time he reached the bridge, Karen had already put the transmission on the main screen. The face that appeared made his blood run cold. Admiral Vorath looked even more reptilian up close. His scaled skin was dark green, almost black. His eyes were like chips of yellow ice. When he spoke, his voice was full of barely controlled rage. Human vessel. We detected your entry into the Shadow Reach. We detected the activation of the forbidden technology. You have committed crimes that demand immediate execution. Admiral, we meant no harm, Daniel started to say. But Vorath cut him off. Silence. You have awakened that which should remain dead. You have touched that which should never be touched. The Shadow Reach exists as a tomb, and you have desecrated it. Luke stepped forward. If this place is so dangerous, why did you leave it intact? Why not destroy everything here? For a moment, something like fear crossed Vorath's face. Because some things cannot be destroyed. Only contained, only forgotten. He leaned forward, and Daniel could see rows of sharp teeth. But you have made that impossible. Your very presence here has triggered systems we spent millennia suppressing. So now we must sterilize this entire region, and you with it. The transmission ended. Karen immediately pulled up the tactical display. Sensors are showing multiple Concordat vessels. Current count is 150, with more arriving every minute. Estimate final fleet strength at over 200 ships, 200 warships against one damaged exploration vessel. The numbers were impossible. Even with the architect technology, they couldn't win a direct fight. How long do we have? Daniel asked. They're taking up positions around the Shadow Reach. Looks like they're forming a blockade to make sure nothing escapes. I'd say we have maybe 6 hours before they start their attack. End quote. Daniel called an emergency meeting of his senior staff. They gathered in the briefing room, all of them exhausted and afraid. Daniel looked at each face and saw the same question. How do we survive this? We can't fight them, Nathan said bluntly. Even with architect weapons, we're outnumbered 100 to 1. Maybe we last 10 minutes instead of 5, but the result is the same. We can't run either, Paul added. The blockade is too tight. They'd shoot us down before we could jump. Helen Morris had been quiet, but now she spoke up. Maybe we're not asking the right question. Maybe it's not about fighting or running. Maybe it's about changing the game entirely. Everyone looked at her. She pulled up a holographic display showing the Concordat's communication networks. The Concordat's power comes from unity, 47 species. All working together. All believing the same story. But what if that story is a lie? What if everyone knew what they really were? Luke caught on immediately. You want to tell them about the architects? About the genocide? More than tell. Prove it. Helen's eyes were bright with determination. We have genetic evidence, historical records, the architect's own testimony. If we broadcast all of that across the entire sector, every species in the Concordat would know the truth. And you think that would make a difference? Nathan asked skeptically. It has to, Maria said. She had been working with the architect data cores for hours. I've been reading their cultural records. The architects weren't just builders, they were teachers. Many of the species in the Concordat were uplifted by the architects, given technology, knowledge, guidance. Those species might not know the truth, but somewhere in their cultural memory, they might remember. Daniel thought about it. It was a long shot. Even if the broadcast worked, even if people believed them, it wouldn't stop the fleet outside from attacking. But it might plant seeds of doubt. It might make the Concordat weaker in the long run. And if humanity was going to die here, at least they could damage their enemies first. How do we make the broadcast? Daniel asked. Karen spoke up from the communications station. The architect structures have transmission arrays more powerful than anything I've ever seen. If I can integrate them with our systems, I could send a signal that would reach halfway across the galaxy, and the Concordat couldn't block it. The technology is too advanced. How long would it take to set up? 4 hours, maybe 5. Daniel made his decision. Do it. Paul, Kyle, I want those architect weapons installed on the horizon. Even if we can't win, I want to hurt them. Nathan. Coordinate with the weapons teams. Helen, Maria. Compile everything we have on the architects. Every piece of evidence, every record, every genetic marker. Make it undeniable. The crew scattered to their tasks. Daniel stayed on the bridge, watching the Concordat fleet assemble. They moved with precision, forming a sphere around the Shadow Reach. Every escape route was covered, every angle of attack anticipated. Admiral Vorath was taking no chances. Paul worked miracles in engineering. The architect weapons were designed for different power systems, different ships, different physics. But Paul adapted them, integrated them, made them work. It was crude, held together with improvised connections and desperate engineering. But it would function. The weapons were unlike anything humans had built. Mass drivers that could launch projectiles at near light speed. Energy cannons that could punch through any shield. Missiles that could navigate through hyperspace to hit targets light years away. All of it powered by technology humanity barely understood. Kyle supervised the installation teams as they mounted the weapons on the Horizon's hull. They had to cut through armor plating and reroute power conduits. The ship groaned under the modifications, but it held together. Maria spent those hours translating architect records into a form other species could understand. She chose carefully, finding the moments that showed the architect's kindness, their wisdom, their peaceful nature. Then she found the records of the war. The massacres, the betrayals, the final desperate stands as the architects died protecting species that had turned against them. Helen compiled the genetic evidence. She showed how dozens of species in the Concordat carried genetic markers from architect intervention, how they had been helped, uplifted, given gifts they now attributed to their own evolution. The evidence was undeniable. The Concordat was built on lies. As the deadline approached, Karen worked frantically to link the architect transmission arrays to the Horizon's computer. The technology was so far beyond human understanding that she had to guess at half the connections. But slowly, impossibly, it came together. Captain, the broadcast system is ready, Karen reported. Once we start transmitting, the Concordat will know exactly where we are, and they'll know what we're doing. How long will the transmission take? About 10 minutes to send everything. Then it'll propagate through the sector's communication networks. Within an hour, billions of people will have access to the information. Daniel looked at the tactical display. The Concordat fleet was in position. They were ready to attack. And now, humanity was about to poke them in the eye. "Do it," Daniel said. "Send the transmission." The architect arrays came to life. Energy poured through systems that had been dormant for billions of years. The signal went out. Unstoppable and undeniable. It pierced through every encryption, bypassed every firewall, reached every computer and communication device in the sector, and across the Concordat, people began to learn the truth about what their civilization had done. The Concordat fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metal predators. 200 warships surrounded the Shadow Reach, their weapons charged and ready. Each ship was a masterpiece of alien engineering, carrying enough firepower to reduce a planet to rubble. Admiral Vorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Justice. His clawed hand gripped the command rail as he stared at the view screen showing the human vessel. Such a small thing. So fragile. And yet it had done what no species had managed in billions of years. It had found the forbidden truth. "All ships, prepare to fire," Vorath commanded. "Target the human vessel first. Then destroy every structure in this cursed place. Leave nothing behind." But before he could give the final order, his communication officer made a distressed sound. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. It's broadcasting on every frequency. I can't block it." "What kind of transmission?" The officer's face went pale. "It's information about the architects, sir. Genetic records, historical data, battle logs from the war. Everything." Vorath felt something cold move through his chest. The humans hadn't just found the truth. They were telling everyone. On the horizon, Captain Daniel Hayes watched the Concordat fleet and knew death was coming. The transmission was sent, but that didn't mean they would survive to see its effects. He opened the ship-wide channel. "All hands, this is the captain. We've done what we came here to do. We've shown the galaxy what the Concordat really is. Whether we live or die now, that truth will spread. It's been an honor serving with all of you." He closed the channel and nodded to Nathan Cole at the weapons station. "If they're going to kill us, let's make them work for it." Nathan's grin was fierce and terrible. "Yes, sir." The first Concordat shots came without warning. Plasma torpedoes streaked through space. Beautiful and deadly. They carried enough energy to vaporize a city. Dozens of them converged on the horizon from every direction. Then, the architect's shields activated. Energy barriers rippled into existence around the horizon, layers of force that bent space itself. The torpedoes hit the shields, and their energy simply vanished, absorbed and dispersed harmlessly into higher dimensions. The horizon didn't even shake. On the Eternal Justice, Vorath stared in disbelief. "That's impossible. Those shields are architect technology. How did they activate them?" His tactical officer checked the sensors again. "Admiral, the human ship has integrated architect weapons systems. They have mass drivers, energy cannons, and defensive screens that match our historical records. Then they die like the architects did." Vorath snarled. "All ships, concentrate fire. Overwhelm their shields with sheer volume. Sing, Vorath." 200 warships opened fire at once. The space around the horizon turned into a storm of energy and projectiles. Enough firepower to destroy a moon hammered against the architect shields. And for a while, the shields held. Nathan Cole targeted the nearest Concordat cruiser and fired the mass drivers. The ancient weapons spun up to speed, launching projectiles at a fraction of light speed. The cruiser's shields tried to stop them and simply shattered. The projectiles punched through the hull like it was paper. The cruiser exploded in a ball of white fire. 2 more Concordat ships died in the next 30 seconds. Nathan worked the weapons with cold efficiency, picking targets and destroying them before they could react. But there were too many. For every ship he destroyed, 10 more took its place. In engineering, Paul Carter watched the power levels dropping fast. "Captain, the shields are draining our reactor faster than we can compensate." We've got maybe 8 minutes before they fail completely. Keep them up as long as you can, Daniel ordered. He knew it was hopeless, but he wouldn't give up while his crew still had breath. Karen Price looked up from her station with wide eyes. Captain, the transmission is working. I'm picking up responses from across the sector. Protests on concordate worlds. Emergency broadcasts. Some species are demanding answers from their governments. Will it be enough to stop the fleet? Luke asked. Karen shook her head. Not in time to save us. The horizon shook as a massive energy blast got through the weakening shields. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Casualties mounting. The ship was dying around them. Far below, in the chamber where the 3 architects slept, Maria Lopez had stayed behind. She couldn't explain why. Something had drawn her back to this place, while everyone else returned to the ship. Now she stood before the stasis pods, watching the battle through the architect computer systems. The last 3 architects were aware. Somehow, despite being locked in stasis for billions of years, they were watching, listening, waiting. Maria felt their thoughts brush against her mind. Not words, but pure meaning. They had seen humanity arrive, seen the genetic tests, recognized their lost children in the strange beings who had found them, and now they saw those children dying. The eldest architect, the one whose name meant something like hope in darkness, made a decision. Maria felt it ripple through the structure. A choice that had been delayed for billions of years was finally being made. On the horizon's bridge, every system suddenly went dark. The shields failed. The weapons powered down. Even life support stuttered and died. For a moment that felt like eternity, the crew sat in darkness and waited for death. Then light returned. But it wasn't from the ship's systems. The architect structures were waking up. All of them. Every building, every tower, every platform across the shadow reach blazed with light. Energy poured through systems that had been dormant since before Earth existed. The ancient machines remembered their purpose, and that purpose was war. Admiral Vorath saw the structures activate and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. True fear. All ships, retreat immediately. Get out of the shadow reach now. But it was too late. The pulse erupted from the central structure where the 3 architects lay in their pods. It was invisible, moving at the speed of light, passing through shields and armor. Like they weren't there. It touched every concordate ship in the fleet, and every system died. Power cores shut down. Weapons went silent. Shields collapsed. Life support failed. Computers crashed and refused to restart. 200 warships became 200 coffins, drifting in the darkness of space. The horizon's systems flickered back to life. Somehow, impossibly, they were unaffected. The architect pulse had been keyed to their genetic signatures, recognizing them as the children of the race that built it. Daniel stared at the tactical display in shock. The entire concordate fleet was dead in space. Helpless. They could destroy every ship now, if they wanted to. Take revenge for the threats, the hate, the near destruction of humanity. Nathan Cole's hands hovered over the weapons controls. Captain? Daniel thought about it. It would be so easy. The Concordat had tried to kill them, had condemned humanity to slow death on a dying Earth, had hunted them across the galaxy. They deserved it. But then Daniel remembered the architect records. The peaceful civilization that had refused to commit massacre even to save themselves. The teachers who had died rather than become killers. No, Daniel said. We're not them. We're not the Concordat. We don't kill helpless enemies. On the Eternal Justice, emergency power finally came online. Admiral Vorath pulled himself up from where he had fallen. His bridge crew was dead or dying. Life support had failed for 20 minutes before backup systems engaged. He activated the emergency communicator with shaking hands. Human vessel, this is Admiral Vorath. You have won. But this changes nothing. The Concordat will come for you. We will hunt your species to extinction. Daniel's response was calm. Maybe. But now the whole galaxy knows what you are. How many species will still follow you after learning the truth? How many will wonder if they're next? Vorath had no answer. He watched the human ship begin to move, heading deeper into the shadow reach. The Concordate fleet could only drift helplessly and watch them go. In the chamber far below, Maria stood before the 3 stasis pods. The architects inside were fading. The Pulse had used the last of their life energy. They had sacrificed themselves to save humanity, just as they had refused to sacrifice others billions of years ago. The eldest one's thoughts touched Maria's mind one last time. A feeling of hope, of completion, of satisfaction, that their long wait had not been in vain. Then the lights in the pods went dark. The last 3 architects in the universe died with smiles on their strange, almost human faces. Maria wept for them, for the civilization that had been erased, for the teachers who had been murdered, for the sacrifice that had saved humanity from the same fate. But she also felt something else. Pride. Because humanity had proven worthy of the gift they'd been given. They had found the strength to show mercy when vengeance would have been so easy. They were truly the children of the architects. The horizon moved slowly through the shadow reach, passing between structures that had stood silent for billions of years. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge and watched the ancient buildings drift by. Each one was a monument to a dead civilization. Each one was a gift to humanity. "Captain, we're receiving a signal," Karen Price said. Her voice was different now, quieter. The battle had changed all of them. It's a location beacon, coming from deep in the shadow reach. Another structure? No, sir. It's a ship. Human design. Broadcasting Earth identification codes. Daniel felt his heart jump. How old is the signal? Man. Karen checked her readings. Recent. Maybe a week old. Sir, it's one of the colony ships. One of the other vessels that left Earth. In the weeks following the battle, more ships arrived. The first was the ESS Discovery, carrying 300 survivors who had been hiding in an asteroid field. Then came the ESS New Dawn, damaged but intact. One by one, the scattered remnants of humanity's exodus found their way to the shadow reach. They came because of the broadcast. The truth about the architects had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. And with it came another message. A call to any humans still alive. A promise of sanctuary in the Forbidden Zone. Commander Luke Bennett stood in the observation deck, watching another ship dock with the growing station they had begun building. We're up to 12 ships now. Almost 2,000 people. It's not much, but it's a start. It's more than we had a month ago, Daniel said. He looked tired. The weight of command had aged him. Any word from Earth? Any word, Luke shook his head. Last transmission we received was 3 weeks ago. Things are getting worse there. The government has completely collapsed. People are fighting over what little resources remain. Can we help them? Not yet. We don't have the ships or supplies. Right now, we're barely surviving ourselves. But they were surviving. That was the important part. Against all odds, humanity had found a foothold among the stars. Dr. Helen Morris worked with teams from all the ships, studying the architect technology and learning how to use it. The knowledge was vast, almost overwhelming. But piece by piece, they figured it out. Look at this. She showed Daniel one day. On her screen was a design for an engine that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of years. The architects were thousands of years ahead of us, maybe millions. But they left us everything we need to catch up. Why? Daniel asked. Why leave all this behind? Because they believed in us. Or in whoever would find them. Helen pulled up another file. This one showing medical technology. They wanted their knowledge to continue, to help others the way they had helped so many species before. Maria Lopez had taken on the task of teaching others to read the architect language. she discovered that many humans could understand it with practice. Something in their genetic code responded to the symbols. The connection between the two peoples ran deeper than anyone had guessed. It's like remembering something you never knew, one of her students explained. The symbols make sense, even though they shouldn't. That's because the architects didn't just give us genetic markers, Maria said. They gave us potential. The ability to understand, to learn, to grow. We're not just related to them. We're meant to continue what they started. The news from the greater galaxy was mixed. The broadcast about the architects had caused chaos in the Concordat. 3 species had immediately withdrawn from the coalition, declaring they wanted no part in an organization built on lies and genocide. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. Some governments fell, others cracked down hard on dissent, but the Concordat itself remained strong. Weakened, yes. Embarrassed and defensive, but still in control of thousands of systems and trillions of beings. Admiral Vorath had survived the battle in the Shadow Reach. He had been demoted, humiliated, but he still had influence, and he still wanted humanity destroyed. "They're calling us a disease," Karen reported, after intercepting Concordat communications. "They're saying we're too dangerous to exist. That we'll restart the Architect War if we're allowed to survive." "Let them talk," Nathan Cole said. He had been promoted to first officer after his actions in the battle. "Words don't matter. What matters is that we're building something here. Something they can't take away." Quote, "And build they did. Using architect technology, they constructed a station in the heart of the Shadow Reach. They called it Haven, a name that spoke to their desperate hope. The station grew quickly, expanding as more ships arrived and more people needed homes. Chief Engineer Paul Carter led the construction efforts. The architect building techniques were like nothing humans had used before. Materials assembled themselves. Structures grew organically. Rooms configured based on need rather than design. It was beautiful and strange and utterly functional. "We could build a city here," Paul said, looking at the plans. "Multiple cities. The technology is limited only by available materials, and this place has resources we haven't even begun to tap." Lieutenant Kyle Adams established security protocols and training programs. Every person on Haven learned basic defense and emergency procedures. They had escaped death once, but Kyle wasn't going to assume they were safe. The Concordat might come back. Other threats might appear. Humanity needed to be ready. "We're not soldiers," one colonist complained during training. "We're farmers, scientists, teachers." "You're survivors," Kyle corrected. "And survivors need to know how to protect themselves." But Haven was more than just a military outpost. Dr. Helen Morris established research labs where teams worked to understand and improve architect technology. Schools were set up for the children. Gardens were grown in biodomes. People fell in love, got married, had babies. Life continued, even in the shadow of extinction. 6 months after the battle, Daniel called a meeting of all the ship captains and colony leaders. 20 people gathered in Haven's council chamber, representatives of the 2,000 humans who had survived the exodus from Earth. "We need to decide what we're building here," Daniel said. "Are we just refugees hiding in the dark? Or are we the foundation of something bigger?" Captain Ellen Wright of the ESS New Dawn spoke first. She was older than Daniel, with gray hair and scars from Earth's final wars. "We can't go back to Earth. It's dying, but we can't stay hidden forever either. What's our long-term goal?" "We survive," said Captain Frank Moore of the ESS Discovery. "We build our strength. We prepare for the day when we can reclaim our place in the galaxy." "And do what?" Helen asked. "Fight the Concordat? We'd lose. They have too many ships, too many resources. Then we do what the architects should have done," Nathan said. "We make allies. The Concordat is fracturing. Species are questioning their leadership. We reach out to those species, show them we're not the monsters the Concordat claims we are." Maria stood up. The architects left us more than technology. They left us a philosophy. They believed in helping others, in teaching, in building bridges between species. Maybe that's what we should be doing. The debate went on for hours. Some wanted to hide and build strength. Others wanted to reach out and make contact with other species. Some wanted revenge on the Concordat. Others wanted peace. In the end, Daniel made the decision. We do all of it. We build Haven into a place of safety and learning. We send out scouts to make contact with species that might be sympathetic. We continue studying architect technology and sharing it with those who prove trustworthy. And yes, we prepare to defend ourselves if the Concordat comes back. That's a big task for 2,000 people, Ellen said. Then we better get started, Daniel replied. Over the next year, Haven grew from a single station to a network of habitats scattered throughout the Shadow Reach. More human ships arrived, some from Earth, others that had been lost and alone for years. The population reached 5,000, then 10,000. They weren't all from Earth. Some were colonists from Mars and the outer planets. A few were from the failed settlements on Europa and Titan. All of them had stories of hardship and loss. All of them found hope in Haven. Scout ships ventured out into the galaxy, making careful contact with species that had left the Concordat or were questioning their membership. Some rejected humanity outright, too afraid or too loyal to the old order, but others listened. They looked at the evidence about the architects. They considered the possibility that the Concordat had lied to them. Slowly, carefully, humanity began to build a network of friends and allies. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the observation deck of Haven, 2 years after the battle in the Shadow Reach. Outside, he could see dozens of ships moving between the stations and structures, human vessels mixed with alien craft, species that had chosen to stand with humanity rather than against it. Karen Price joined him, her son balanced on her hip. She had married one of the engineers and had a baby. New life in the darkness. Do you think we'll ever go back to Earth? She asked. Daniel thought about it. Earth was dying, maybe already dead. But Earth was just a planet. Humanity was more than that. They were an idea, a dream, a stubborn refusal to give up even when the universe turned its back on them. Maybe someday, he said. But right now, we're building something new. Something the architects would have been proud of. In the council chambers, Helen Morris and Maria Lopez were teaching a class of mixed species. Humans, yes, but also representatives from the 6 species that had allied with them. They were learning about the architects together, studying their technology and philosophy. The architects believed that all intelligent life had value, Helen explained. They thought diversity made the galaxy stronger. That's why they helped so many species reach the stars. And that's why the Concordat feared them, an alien student added. It was a young being from a species called the Keth, blue-skinned and wide-eyed. Because unity through fear is easier than unity through respect. Exactly, Maria said. And that's what we're trying to build here. A coalition based on mutual respect and shared knowledge, not through fear or lies. Nathan Cole commanded the defense fleet now. 50 ships, human and alien, all equipped with adapted architect technology. They weren't enough to fight the Concordat directly, but they could defend Haven. And they were growing stronger every month. Paul Carter had become the chief architect of Haven's expansion. He designed new stations, new ships, new technologies that combined architect principles with human and alien innovation. The results were sometimes strange, but they worked. And in the ruins where the 3 architects had died, a memorial stood. A simple monument, made of the same black material as the ancient structures. It bore no names, because the architects' true names had been lost to time. But it bore a message in their language, translated so all species could read it. They were teachers, they were builders, they were dreamers. They died so that others might live. Let us honor them by continuing their work. Daniel visited the memorial when he could. He would stand there in silence, thinking about the three beings who had sacrificed everything for a species they barely knew. For children born billions of years too late to know them, "Thank you," he would whisper to the empty air. "We'll try to be worthy of what you gave us." And in the darkness of space, in the places the Concordat feared to go, humanity and their allies built and grew and thrived. They were no longer alone. They were no longer helpless. They were the inheritors of the architect's legacy. The universe had turned its back on them. The Galactic Concordat had condemned them to extinction. They had been hunted, attacked, left to die in the void. But in the shadows between the stars, they had found strength. They had found purpose. They had found each other. And from those shadows, they rose, not as conquerors, but as teachers. But as builders. Not as humans alone, but as the children of the architects, carrying forward a dream that had died billions of years ago. The dream of a galaxy where all species could reach the stars together. Where diversity was celebrated, not feared. Where knowledge was shared, not hoarded. Where the strong helped the weak instead of crushing them. It was a dream worth fighting for. Worth surviving for. Worth building for. And in Haven, in the Shadow Reach, in the hearts of humans and aliens who had chosen hope over fear, that dream lived on. The shadows had risen. And they would never fall again.